as we discussed earlier, let's talk about integrity. What is integrity? And I think it's a really, really important word. I don't think there's enough of it out there. I would hope that people would consider me a man of integrity. And I guess why would they consider me a man of integrity? Um, I I try to do what I say I'm going to do every time I say I'm going to do it, or I don't say I'm going to do it. And that's an interesting it's an interesting place to be when you want to be able to promise somebody something, but you start to question whether you have the capacity or the time maybe
Yeah.
to do it. So you're giving up the opportunity to help someone, but you're actually being helpful because all you would have done was disappoint them, you
Yeah.
know?
Well, it reminds me of this is years ago. Somebody said that integrity, they associate integrity with morality, and they really don't have anything to do with one another. Integrity is really saying what you're going to do. You do what you say you're going to do. So again, there's like a lot of definitions or terms that they get adjusted, or they have different meanings over time. But the true meaning of integrity is nothing to do with morality. If somebody says, "Hey, I'm going to kill you," and they do it, you could say they have integrity because they follow through with what they said. It's the promise to themselves. It has nothing to do with morality. That's a different.
That is an extremely interesting take on the word integrity. That's putting a smile on my face, dude. Yeah, I think we're all faced with decisions. I don't think we're all faced with decisions of life. The more that you aspire, the more that you want to succeed, the more that you want to do good and serve other people. I would imagine you're inviting more of these moments where your integrity is going to be challenged.
So let's run with it this way. A drug dealer that says he's going to sell drugs and he's going to be there to sell the drugs, does he have integrity?
Well, that reminds me of a story from my 20s. I was working in a restaurant, a really fine dining place, and I was a waiter and a bartender, and it was all these busboys, and most of them were Hispanic. Everybody's small to me, I guess, but I remember them all being small because they called me la jirafa, which is giraffe, and I called them minusculo, which is midget. So we had a lot of fun, and I spoke Spanish at the time, so we could talk in both English or Spanish.
Yeah. And you're 6'5" and they're 5'5", so that's probably the difference.
6'4.5", yeah, 5'5". That was probably the tallest one. But we had a lot of fun. It's a crazy business. But this one guy, Louis, was a coke dealer, and I was telling my dad about him one day, and I said, "Yeah, Dad, he's a good guy," and he said, "No, he's not." He said, "He might be a nice guy, but he's not a good guy. Good guys don't sell coke." Yeah. Right. So that's
different than integrity, though.
Yeah.
But he had integrity because every time he went to buy some coke, he seemed to have it.
And he seemed to have it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's a quality that I certainly look for in anybody that I'm going to associate with. I mean, is that number one on your list? When you're thinking about befriending someone or bringing a client on or hiring somebody or being on a teammate, having a teammate of some kind.
Yeah. Hey, I'll share some let's say personal stories, business, but maybe a little combination of business and related. But if I was to say one person in my life, the last probably 15 years, maybe more, that has the most integrity of anybody have come in contact with in that period of time, it's my gardener. This guy has an amazing integrity. Yeah. He always shows up and does a good job, a little bit better than good. He has some guys that work for him, so he also trains his guys like that. If I ask him for something, I never ever have to call him back again and ask him, remind him. He just does it, and then he sends me an invoice, but it's always reasonable, right? It's not outrageous. I've had other gardeners that were just the opposite. Talk, never fall through. when they do something, they send you this outrageous bill, and then you end up fighting over it, and there's no integrity there. It's just the opposite.
Yeah,
And
it's what a cool thing to be able to say. Yeah, I'm always, when you bring somebody up like that, I'm always, my mind starts racing. Like, I wonder what his parents were like. I wonder how he was raised. I wonder,
he's first generation.
yeah.
He's definitely a family man. I'm assuming he's Catholic because he's from Mexico. And
Mhm.
yeah, the other one is the gal that's been cleaning our house. This is 22 years ago when we bought the house. It's in front of a bus stop, or near a bus stop. So I opened up the door like the first week we moved in. It was a brand new house. We just built it, and opened up the door, and she's there, and she says, "Hi, my name's Lupe. Can I clean your house?" And I'm like, "Well, that's odd. You know, sure. Actually, we need somebody to clean the house, right? So come on in." She, 20 years straight. Actually, it's more than that. It's like 22 years straight. I don't think she's ever missed a week, not
That's
a single
awesome.
week. And it turns out later that she didn't even have a car. She just got off the bus, walked down the street. There was the
Wow.
house, knocked on the door, and says, "Can I clean your house?" I said, "Yeah." She owns a house. She has a daughter. That's why I said, without immigration, we're so effed as a country. I cannot say that strong enough. The work ethic and the integrity of immigrants. And also, don't get me wrong, I'm also not open. I don't believe in open borders either. But, I find
Yeah,
that
well,
first
yeah,
generation immigrants that come here to work and see the opportunities have the highest level of integrity. Not
yeah,
all. I'm
yeah.
just saying.
Well, I appreciate you saying not all. I think, I told you, I got it right next door. They're building a new house, and the vast majority of these guys, I can't vouch for the legality of or the illegality of their citizenship, but in terms of consistency and work ethic, and the other thing is they're always smiling. They're enjoying what they're doing
Well, they're
because
graceful
yeah, yeah. Well, all these words now are popping up as perhaps components of integrity, like
of integrity.
Yeah, responsibility is part of integrity,
Yes,
right?
absolutely. Yeah.
Personal accountability is part of integrity.
Mhm.
I told all three of my kids as they aspire to start their own businesses years ago, how, you get on this topic of how do you distinguish your services in a crowded market? And I said, without any forethought, I said, if you do what you promise you're going to do
Right.
all the time, you'll be in the top 5%, no matter what the business is.
No question.
And that's a double-edged sword, right? Because that's such an easy way to get yourself a unique selling proposition, as they say, a USP in the business.
Yeah.
But my God, that means 95% of people don't.
Mhm.
That's sad.
Oh, especially this day and age. I've noticed that it's a lot easier to say you're going to do something, and then in the 11th hour, or in the last second, you send them a text.
Yeah,
I'm not going to make it.
yeah,
That's not integrity.
no,
That's just
that's shitty.
that's shitty.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that you see more and more of that.
How do
That,
you feel about punctuality? I am a very punctual person,
yes, you
and
are. I can vouch
when
for you on
people
that.
when people are late for me, I get offended. And
Well, it is a sign of disrespect, I have to say.
intentional or unintentional, it's still
Yeah,
disrespectful,
yes, it
right?
is.
But I was married to a woman, fortunately, who was on Irish time. That's a thing. Irish time means could be 2 hours late and nobody gives a shit, right? So there's a cultural
I've never
component.
heard of his Irish time. I know I remember I played rugby with a number of Polynesians, so there was such a thing as island time,
Yep.
which
Yep.
by the way, there is some truth to that, because on an island, it starts when everybody gets there because there's nowhere else to go. So there is such a thing as island time.
Yeah. And
I
isn't,
never
and
heard that about Ireland. I guess
well,
Ireland
I
is an
mean,
island.
it's an island. Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, I've heard island time as well. So then is integrity perhaps different from culture to culture?
I think there could be a variable of how they display that. The other thing about the Polynesians, if they say they were going to do something, actually, no, I think about that. uh, they're very loyal, but you're right. It's a good conversation. They're very loyal. but they're not, I'm generalizing, obviously,
Mm-hmm.
just because you're loyal. I'm not speaking to Islanders specifically,
Mm-hmm.
doesn't mean you don't have integrity, or you do have integrity. Loyalty and integrity could be different, right?
Yeah, I'm starting to think about shades of integrity and in the context of forgiveness. You know, is it necessary that what if you make a mistake, right? What if it's unintentional, but it's still a bad move?
I
Is
think
that
integrity somebody would say, they'd admit their mistake and say, this, I'm speaking for myself. If
Mhm.
I made a mistake, I would say, hey, I screwed up. I'm sorry that I did that. As a result, this is what I'm going to do. And then do that.
Okay, so you're forgiving of the mistake if the person who makes the mistake takes immediate and personal accountability
Yeah.
for that and
Yeah. I'm
responsibility for
speaking
that.
for myself right now. And I
I
also,
agree. I agree.
I value that people say, hey, I screwed up.
Hmm.
And as a result, it won't happen again. And here's what I'm going to do to make sure it doesn't happen again.
Yeah, you know what really pisses me off, and I think it's because I own my own small business. Um, I told everybody in my company knew you are the face of this business. I don't care what your position is, right? If you're interacting with a supplier or a vendor or a client or a fellow employee, and the company has done something wrong, hopefully by mistake, you don't say that's not my responsibility.
Yeah.
You take responsibility on behalf of the company, and then you come to me and we figure out what the solution is. And I don't blame you for that. I thank you for that.
Yeah.
Right. And the flip side of that, as the owner of a business, when I go into an organization and the clerk says, "Oh, I can't do that," or "We don't do that," or doesn't take responsibility, or "We're out of that item," or whatever, right? I'm like, I pull the manager aside and I'm like, "This is what's going on." All right. And on the other side of that, when I get really good service at like a restaurant, I almost always like really good service. Like she was great. He was great. He was personable. He was timely. He didn't write anything down. And he remembered like everything was clicking. I always pull the manager aside and say, "You got a great employee right there.
That's
Kudos,
nice. That's really
kudos to
nice.
her, to him."
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I think it's, and I was at
Or
Starbucks
tell them
yesterday.
too.
Oh,
Tell
I
them.
always I always tell them. I
Yeah.
always tell them. My father was he always embarrassed us flirting with waitresses, and he was so innocent about it, and they all loved it, right?
Yeah.
But he was always very complimentary to people in service and customer service and stuff. I think that was, I learned that
What a nice
at
quality of a person.
it is a nice
And a
quality. It's
great
part of
trait
it.
to have.
It's definitely in the integrity category. I think I was in Starbucks yesterday just doing some work, and a woman came in with her small daughter, probably 12 or so, and they called her name. I wasn't really paying attention to them, but they were pretty close to me, and they called the young lady's name, and she went up to get her drink, and the barista handed it to her, and the girl looked the barista in the eye and said, "Thank you." And the girl said, "You're welcome. Have a nice day." "Well, you have a nice day too." And on the way out, I walked over to the woman and the girl, and I said, I love when I see a young lady who's got manners and has the wherewithal to look someone in the eye and be respectful. So I just wanted to congratulate both of you. And then they lit up, and then everybody walked away with a smile.
Yeah. Speaking of that, I used to go to get coffee every morning. And when I did, I was taught as a young boy or man to hold the door open for women, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, you hold the door open for anybody, but
Anybody.
particularly women.
Mm-hmm.
So I just do that. It's just what I do.
Me too.
I don't think about it, right? I realize it in recent years, probably out of 5 times, 2 times I'd open the door, they'd walk straight through, not just take my place in line,
Yeah,
not even say thank you.
I know. I hate that.
And you talk about ruining your day, right? And what do you do? What do you say something? Now you're a real asshole, right?
Yeah. Yeah. You
I
get to
think
stand right behind him after calling him an asshole for 5 minutes.
And it's probably why I don't go get coffee every morning anymore. But yeah, I think that's to me is an example of somebody is either so into themselves that they're oblivious to everything that's going on, which is not the kind of person you want to be around, right?
Well, let me stop you for a
Or
second.
nobody ever.
Let me stop you and say the possibility does exist. And I think all of these things involve integrity or lack thereof. What if they've just gone through something horrible and their mind is elsewhere?
That's
I
fair.
think you have to leave space for that person. I think you have to. It's not easy.
Okay, that means that 2 out of 5 people are going through it so bad. Even when you're going through it. In fact, I find out when I'm down, and we have our ups and downs. If anything, I become more aware of that, and even more grateful for all those simple little things. Like I'm more sensitive to those things. No, so no, I think it's a bullshit excuse.
Yeah. Yeah.
Even if they are going through it. Now, I guess if somebody, lost their, it was a death or something else, but even that, I don't think that gives you permission just to let everything else go.
No, I don't think it gives you permission to let everything go, but I do think it gives the other person permission to forgive. You don't have to.
Well, you have to forgive because you're not doing yourself any good by being mad at them. You don't know them. You don't owe them anything. I don't know.
No, I think forgiving people is definitely an integrity quality for sure. Yeah. But I think just think about all the areas in life where integrity is a thing, or a lack thereof is a thing. And all of those words that are underneath integrity, like character, follow through, persistence, do what you say you're going to do, forgiving other people, apologizing, taking personal responsibility. I mean, integrity is a big word.
Yeah, you're right. There's a lot to it. I think integrity is also being consistent about something, consistently doing the same thing over and over good, and not really being dependent on the outcome of it, where you do it regardless what happens because that's just what you do. I think that's a form of integrity.
And I guarantee you would say this, that all the football and the rugby that you played, it's almost like team sports. Everyone else insists on your integrity. Otherwise the team breaks down, right?
Well, it's hard to be a leader if you don't have integrity, because nobody's going to follow you if they see that you don't have integrity and you can't be consistent. So there's no question that has a lot to do with it. How about in business? I'll share one story, and I know you've got some stories. Have you ever been
please do.
Yeah. As you know, I owned a sales organization for over 2 decades, right? Sold millions and $500 million worth of product cabinets. That was my B2B. And I remember this is years ago. I just taken on a new line, or I think I was hired as a sales manager at this time. This goes back some time. And so the national sales manager flies in. We do some sales calls together. And during the sales call, the account that we were calling on says, is the product line in any other companies nearby? That was a common question, right? They want to know if they had any competitors of that particular product line.
Yep.
And he says, I started to say, actually, yes. And he kicks me, like full on kicks me underneath the chair.
Yeah.
And then he says, no, that's actually not true. Not does he kick me. He also does one of those, puts his hand kind of like in front of me. And then he steps up and says, no, we don't have anybody else. And he goes on to say, da, 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 da. So we get in the car. Remember, this is my boss. So
yeah.
And I say, I remember his name is Duke. I'll never forget it. I said, Duke, why did you do that? That's not true. I know, by the way, I know this owner. I've done business with him before. That's how we got the appointment. That's my reputation. That is my integrity.
Yeah.
So what you said is not true. And he said, well, Jim, you don't understand. What I was saying is we don't have it underneath the same brand, because it was a different manufacturer. They had multiple brands. I said, fine, just tell them that then. Yeah. Just tell them the truth.
Yeah.
What's wrong with that? But if you don't tell them now, then eventually they're going to find out. And then now we're not going to be trusted. And he said, you just don't get it, do you? You don't get it. And this and that. And I just remember going, this guy, not only do I not like him, I used to somewhat idolize him. Um, I don't know if I can work for him anymore. And I made some pretty good money for a few years, and eventually I fired him. Yeah, that's it. And that happens.
Yeah, no, I have had a couple things like that happen. And when you're the subordinate, it's a
Yeah.
weird place to be.
Well, it is, especially
But
if you're young. I was, again,
yep,
this is,
yep. I think I've told you this story before, dude, and I've subsequently re-engaged with this guy, and it's been very pleasant. But one of the first, I think the first year or two that I worked for him, I had moved into a position of managing the sales staff and the recruiting staff. I was no longer an individual contributor. And when I was an individual contributor, I did very well. And he was my mentor. He was teaching me and training me. But he walked out on the sales floor one day, and I was standing up, and he just started screaming at me. I don't remember exactly why. This was a long time ago. But I remember immediately thinking to myself, this is not, I'm not going to tolerate this. So I let him finish. And then I said, can I talk to you in your office, please? And he goes, yeah. And we walked into the office, and I said, I appreciate the fact that you signed my paycheck. I appreciate this opportunity that you've given me. I'm learning a ton, and I love what I'm doing. And transparently, I need this job. I'm about to have a child. But if you ever yell at me in front of anybody again, I'll walk out that door and you will never see me again. And I tell that story now for a lot of different reasons, because I deal with people that are in jobs that they hate, they're toxic or whatever, their boss sucks, treats them poorly, disrespectfully. I'm like, your choice to stay, dude. It's your choice to stay. And I was petrified because I was making good money, and I wasn't aware of any other options that I had. And I was really enjoying what I was doing. But my integrity, my self-respect was more important than anything else. And I'm so proud of that moment. It was such a proud moment. And I think I asked him this a couple of weeks ago, and he didn't remember that specific incident, which is interesting. But I will always wonder, was he purposefully doing this to test me and see what I was made of? Or was he just being a dick? Right. And he was such a master manipulator. And I say that today in a complimentary fashion because I watched him create success for so many people. But sometimes he did it in a manipulative way. But I don't think I'll ever know the answer to that question. But
Yeah.
I love telling that story.
Yeah.
You know?
It reminds me of the quote we talked about earlier. When you play stupid games, you win stupid prizes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'll tell my, unless this is just actually in recent years. So another, again, VP of marketing guy was very, very successful in the day, right? In his day. And later on, I'm not gonna leave his name out of this one. Later on, ended up working for him again, 10 years later or whatever. And in my agency, we were typically number one because we were in Northern California, so we had a great market. But my agency was always, one or two in the country as far as sales. But he turned out to be just a complete asshole. Just one of those guys. It was just play games and was not a good person at all. And then about 2 years later, after he got fired, and he walks up to me at a national convention. That's right. It was a big gala party, fun, VIP kind of event. And he was there, and he walked up and he says, Hey, Jim, how you doing? Good to see you. Good to see you. And I don't know how to react because I don't really care for him. Right. Especially the way it went down the end.
Yeah.
And he says to me, hey, can I ask you a question? And I said, yeah. And he goes, what, oh no, he that's right. He said, hey, Jim, I want to apologize to you. And I went, wow, I didn't realize you knew what I was thinking, but he must have picked up on it. Right? He goes, I'm going to apologize. And then I just remember saying, well, yeah, Larry, I said his name. I said, Larry, I learned sometimes we do things we have to do at certain times, but yeah, but I never forgave him. It really,
Yeah.
he obviously recognized it later, and he tried to win people over after the fact that he did it. But he knew at the time he was playing stupid games, and he got a stupid prize in the end. But that's not a good person. That's not a person of integrity.
You know, it just reminded me of a guy that I've recently begun developing a relationship with about other things, but his company, the one he started, his second company, it's basically a hedge fund.
Yeah.
And he manages other people's money. And there's a pretty significant minimum to buy in, like a poker game, you know, it's like 100 grand or 500 grand. I can't remember what, but his model is he invests in companies after doing a deep dive investigation into the CEO. And he does it with ex-military guys who do background checks, and they don't interview the CEO. They interview everyone who's ever worked for the CEO
Before he purchases the company.
before he purchases the company. He promises everybody. I was talking to him about it the other day, and he does things like, we want to see if there's any DUIs. We want to see if he's unfaithful to his wife. We want to see if he's been, and if he's being brought in to increase sales, we need a certain type of personality. If he's being brought in to decrease costs, that's a different personality. If he's bringing, if they're bringing him in to do mergers and acquisitions, that's a whole nother skill set. So he maps out the guy's personal life up against his professional life and looks for the consistencies and inconsistencies. And he said the returns we get on the investments are usually quite big, because that's such an important person that everything trickles down. If that person has integrity, then everything else seems to work better. Yeah. But if that person is inconsistent, hypocritical, irresponsible, whatever, we don't touch them. Yeah. I thought that was fascinating.
Yeah.
You know, yeah. And I don't know anybody else that's doing that, that I'm aware of. And I said to him, these people, how do you get access to these people that used to work for this CEO? And he said, well, these are all investigative reporters. That's what they do for a living.
Yeah.
And then the military guys are, you know, running the other background checks and security clearances and stuff like that. I thought it was such a cool concept. But I think that we're kind of running out of space on this episode, Jim. But I think that one of the things that resonated with me when I told my story about standing up for myself, for my integrity, for my self-respect, I see way too many people, and I want your opinion on this as well, that are working in positions where they are being disrespected and they're accepting it. And I think it's because they don't know that they have other options. Maybe it's a lack of confidence or self-worth, but I see it a lot.
Well, maybe they're just supporting their family and they can't afford to lose the job. And I don't think that's fair. Not everybody has another option. Not everybody, like you said, is a pair of confidence.
No,
there's a lot of people that work because they have to, or they're fearful if they don't, they can't support their family, or they're going to lose something. So
what, but from my lens as a recruiter, I want to help people like that. At the very least, at least think to yourself, what if there was the possibility that I could do something else or work for someone else? Isn't that worthy of a little bit of investigation? Should I just accept that this is my fate? I think that's a sad place to be. I feel bad for people that feel that way. And I know there are people that literally have no options. I accept that as true. Mm-hmm. But I think there's a huge body of people that do have options, but don't believe they have options. Yeah. That's maybe a better distinction. And, you know,
changes. They're fearful of the change, of taking the risk and it not being better. So, and that's always a possibility with the new
in life. And I'm sure you've bumped into this as well. You're running into situations where your integrity is put to the test and you have to do something you don't want to do to be consistent with your level of integrity. Because to your point, this guy put you in a position where we collectively just lied to this guy.
Yeah.
I didn't, but I'm attached to you at the hip. Yeah. You know, that sucks.
Yeah.
Right. And you eventually found something else to do. You eventually separated from that guy, because at that moment, don't let me put words in your mouth, you decided this is not going to be sustainable.
Right. Right. But it's also running a business. So collected commissions for probably a year or 2 years after that.
Yep.
But maybe that's a lack of integrity. I took the money, but I didn't fully support him or his
Well, I
beliefs.
think
But I obviously I delivered. I delivered the sales that they wanted.
it's
So
it's probably, you know, there's got to be room for humanity in the integrity discussion, right? Because we all make these, we operate, it's not always black and white. Sometimes there's gray areas, right? And you have to make judgment calls. And sometimes, but whenever I have done anything, and I can wrap up with this, whenever I've done anything that could be questionable regarding my integrity, even nuance, I always feel bad about that. Always. I never forget that. And to me, it takes a little chip out of you, you know?
yeah, it does. It does.
You know?
So,
All right, dude.
all right,
All right.
Mark. Until
Wrap
next
it up.
week.
All
Yeah.
right. We'll talk to you next week.
Okay.